Now we have to reach out, right? We're getting into the hows. I would suggest you reach out through email. Now, some people say you can call, but I think that comes across a little pushy. So in today's environment, people are very, very busy. They have their schedules. If you call and interrupt them, that might create some friction, especially if you don't know them. So I suggest that you reach out through email, but you design a short little script to make the request. And you can ask for an informational interview. They know what that is. Okay. So you need to design something ahead of time, right? Ideally, you make the request through a mutual friend, like I was saying. That's a warm call. And you need to be clear on the purpose of the request. Again, it needs to be short, but you want to keep it easy breezy, as I was saying. Make it light. Don't go into this big spiel about, you're interested in this, you're interested in that, you're getting a degree in this, and you're doing this is my background, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to do that at this stage. Save that for the interview. You're just trying not to turn them off and make them sound like you're a sales call. You're just making a few brief sentences to introduce yourself. You can offer some dates and some times to get together, but be flexible according to their schedule. Don't make them work for you. Make it as easy as possible to accommodate them. Usually, I found that in my experiences that they usually last about 30 minutes. 15 is, I've never had anybody give me that little time. They usually book about 30 minutes. Sometimes they go over if they have time. Sometimes if they only have 30 minutes, they'll tell you, I have a hard stop at this point. So just keep that in mind and be very, very mindful of their time as well. Try to get a face-to-face meeting. Yeah?
You might be going over this after, but just in case. If you make the request to a mutual friend in an email, does this mean that you're, for example, writing an email with a CC to your friend saying, hi, this person talked to me about you, and
you could.
See if I could talk to you, ask you some questions?
Yeah.
Would that be an example?
Yeah. I'll show you an example, but you could definitely CC your friend. It's actually a good idea, so they know that you've reached out to the person and you're keeping them in the loop. Very good. So you want to ideally meet face-to-face if possible. So sometimes they're very gracious and they'll say, hey, come to my office, or do you want to get coffee? Sometimes they're in a building and there's a Starbucks on the first floor and you can meet them. Sometimes they're so busy that they can grant you a phone call. So I had somebody who was very gracious who granted me a phone call during his lunch break. So I thought that was very sweet of him to do that. So take what you can get. I've actually had a few email exchanges. It's best that you make some kind of personal contact, so that the idea is that they get to know you, right? They get to know you, you get to know your personality. Okay, so go for face-to-face if you can. Once the interview is confirmed, finalize the logistics. Again, you are the manager of this meeting. You need to take charge of that. Don't ever make them work for it. Okay, so finalize the date and the time and all of that, and make sure you're thorough about the location, the time, so forth. Okay, so here's an example of a script, and this has been very successful for me. This might be something that I would reach out through email. I say, hello, so-and-so. Our mutual acquaintance, Yanni, suggested that I reach out to you. I'm very interested in learning about a career in career development, expressive arts, whatever the topic is. Would you be willing to have a brief chat with me about this? I would be so grateful for your time. Thanks so much. I hope to hear from you soon. And I say a brief chat because I don't want it to sound, I put informational interview in the subject. I'll put informational interview request, Yanni's friend, right? Something like that, because Yanni has already contacted this person and that person's waiting for me. So they know, that gives them the heads up, right? So keep it easy breezy. You don't have to go into this big spiel. They're not going to be turned off. They're not going to think you're trying to sell them anything, right? Just easy breezy. Keep a nice brief chat. Keep it casual. You don't want them to think that you're taxing them in any way, right? So this is an example of a cold email and I've also done this where you don't know them at all. And I've sent this through email. So I said, I hope you don't mind my reaching out to you. I found your profile on LinkedIn. I'm very interested in learning more about a career in expressive arts. Would you be open to a brief chat? I'd love to hear from you. I would love to hear about your experiences and get your advice. Thanks so much. Hope to hear from you soon. Right? Short, concise. I've had tremendous luck with this. Right? Again, it's not a big old spiel, Not going, I just want to have a nice brief little chat with them. And again, I'll put informational interview request in the subject so they know ahead of time. I'm not trying to deceive them. I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm just being very straightforward. I'm really interested in this career. Would you be willing to chat? If you want to be a little more specific, would you be open to a brief chat, 15, 30 minutes, let them know you're not going to be draining them.
Would you suggest doing a email title or subject title that's a little bit more like stand out than just that?
If as long as they know what the purpose is, right? So if you can be creative about it, sure, why not? Something that's going to get their attention. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, so it doesn't
get
lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. As long as they know what, you don't want to disguise the purpose of what you're trying to go for, Okay, so say you hear back, yeah, I'm willing to meet with you, right? So next step is you need to research that person. Hopefully you've done that before you've reached out to them, know a little bit. But dive even deeper and look through their LinkedIn profile. Understand their background. Look at their career progression. They started out as an assistant. They moved up. Now they're like at the very tippy top. They're an executive director, right? Executive director might be a bit too busy to meet with you, but you might be able to see the career progressions that go up. Get an idea of their history, and you might even ask them about that once you meet with them. Look at their educational background. Look and see if they've had any additional training. Kind of go, you have this degree, but yet you sought additional training in biology. Why did you do that? I'm just making something up now. But that might be interesting. That might be a key indicator of those things that are needed in the job that you're going for. If they've done any volunteer experience, right? Degrees, what past degrees did they have? What past companies did they work for? And then once you've done that, come up with some clear questions that you want to ask them. And make sure you understand the objective for meeting with them. Like when I met with that man from Kaiser, I wanted to know what a career advisor was like in a corporation. And so that was my objective. And what I usually do is I come up with a notebook. I write like 5 to 10 questions. And I take my notebook with me. And they see that I have my questions and I'm taking notes as we're talking. And I don't keep my nose in the notebook, but I will write down important things as we're talking. And then if the conversation kind of stalls a little bit, I can go back and I can ask more questions. So preparing for the interview would be the next step, right? So talk about the questions that you may want to ask. You don't want to ask yes or no questions because that's not going to be conversational, right? You want to ask open-ended questions. So you guys think of some questions that you might want to ask?
How did you get into this field?
Perfect. And that's usually how it begins, right? They tell me about yourself. Kinds of things are usually good icebreakers, right? So how'd you get into this field? So what training or education is essential in this work, right? I mentioned degrees and additional training earlier. What personal qualities or abilities do you think are important for being successful in this job? I think that's a good one. You want to show your interest in that. You want to be successful in your career. What part of this job do you find most satisfying? What's most challenging? Be very careful about those kinds of questions, by the way. You want to stay positive. So if you say most challenging, you don't want to say, what's the worst part of this job, right? Because, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the obstacles that you have to, work with? That's a more positive spin on getting at some of the negative things to a job. What trends are you seeing in this field, right? How jobs change, right? How do you see this role changing in the future? How did you get started in whatever it is that they're talking about? How did you get started in creative arts? What attracted you to this company or this industry? Is there a demand for people in this field? I think that that's a really important one. Choosing the careers that you want to get into. You want to find out ahead of time, is there too much saturation? Is this going to be difficult for me to break into this field? Not that you shouldn't go into that field if you're really called to it, but it's a good idea to be prepared. And then within the company itself, the company may be in great need for certain roles. See, what particular advice would you give a person entering the field? Again, you're asking for advice when you're going for an informational interview. Are there any resources they can refer you to get more information? I think that's a good one. So if there's journals or online resources or associations, I reached out to people who were university advisors, and they actually contacted me back and told me about an upcoming conference. So you learn about things through those informational interviews. Do you anticipate any growth in your team within the next year? Okay, so you never, ever, ever ask for a job during an informational interview, right? But that's one of the sneaky ways to get around it, right? You're not being aggressive. You're just saying, do you anticipate, what is it going to look like within the next year? You're going to be growing your team at all, right? And they may say, well, we maxed our budget out for this year, but possibly next year we might be looking into it. You're building connections, right? So you're trying to find out what the growth is going to be like down the road. Yeah, so any question?
What if you're asking about an internship?
An internship? So you're looking for internship possibilities, right? So you might ask that, I would say in general, I wouldn't ask that person directly. I would say in general, does this company offer internships? And if so, where would that internship be? That might be in your area. And then you might ask suggestions. Do you know of companies that do offer internships? Do you have any suggestions for me in that area? All right. And lastly, can you recommend anyone else that I can talk to that'd be willing to talk with me? Right? You want to keep the conversations going. You want to keep building that network. Never leave an informational interview without asking that question. Because then you're building your network and they'll say, oh, you know Yanni, okay. Yanni recommends that I talk with Michael. Okay, Michael recommends that I talk with Jody. Kind of goes down the road, right? And of course, you're not limited to those questions, right? Those are just to give you an idea. You can come up with very specific ones regarding the fields that you're going into, right? If those of you who are in psychology, you might want to ask about the certain therapies that they would recommend that you broaden. Maybe they're really into CBT or something. That's the kind of thing you want to get into the specifics of your roles.